All right, welcome to episode 54 of Documents and Drafts, the podcast where we take a look at important historical documents, especially in the United States, and drink some really cool beers along the way. We look at the background of each document and read them, and we look at the background of the beer as well, chat about it. We'll also do some other cool things along the way, maybe look at some historic SCOTUS cases, maybe look at current things going on in the Supreme Court or something else. And we'll go like that. To the music, background music is provided by Soundstripe. I use the blues genre pretty much exclusively. Thanks to them for the music. If you hear background noise, it's because it's yard work day in my neighborhood, and I have an old house, and so can't cut everything out. The documents today, we're going to read something called Modern Chivalry by Hugh Henry Breckinridge. Let me get the share screen up here. Where did it? Oh, here it is. So we're going to use these two books, 50 Core American Documents, Required Reading for Students and Teachers from the Ashbrook Press and the Nation's Archives, History of the United States Documents by Eric Brunn and Jay Crosby. And that's the book we're going to use today. We are reading Modern Chivalry from Hugh Henry. I'll back up again. I keep doing that. We're going to drink some Helles. We'll talk about it in general. I have kind of a generic Helles that was bought at World Market for me. It's an unfiltered. It's pretty good. We're going to read An Anglican monarchical aristocratical party has sprung up from Thomas Jefferson, which is basically the complaining about the Federalist Party, I believe. And then if we have time, we're going to do the Alien and Sedition Act, one of the worst decisions we've ever made. And then if we have time, we'll look at some SCOTUS history and some other stuff like that. All right, so here we go. Everybody ready? All right. Here is Hugh Henry Breckinridge. Okay. So here's the background. Hugh Henry Breckinridge, six-volume satirical novel, Modern Chivalry, 1792 to 1815, probed the shortcomings of American democracy. Similar to Don Quixote, the main character, Captain Farrago, wandered the countryside with an Irish servant, Teague O'Regan. The plotline gave Breckinridge, an unsuccessful politician himself, an opportunity to spoof different regions, but also express the complex problems that American democracy raised. In this excerpt, it's about a page and a half, he delves into the subtle dilemmas that equal opportunity raises at election time. All right, are you ready? Okay, here we go. A democracy is beyond all question the freest government because under this, every man is equally protected by the laws and has equally a voice in making them. But I do not say an equal voice because some men have stronger voices than others and can express more forcibly their opinion of public affairs. Others, though they may not speak very loud, yet have a faculty of saying more in a short time, and even in case of others who speak little or none at all. Yet what they do say, containing good sense, comes with greater weight. So that all things considered, every citizen has not, in the sense of the word, an equal voice. But the right being equal, what great harm is it if it is unequally exercised? It is necessary that every man should become a statesman, no more than every man should become a poet or a painter. The sciences are open to all, but let him only who has taste and genius pursue them. If any man covets the office of a bishop, says St. Paul, he covets a good work. But again, he adds this caution: ordain not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he falls into the condemnation of the devil. It is indeed making a devil of a man to lift him up to a state which he is not suited. A ditcher is a respectable character with his overalls on and a spade in his hand. Put the same man to these offices which require the head, whereas he has been accustomed to impress with his foot, and there appears a contrast between the man and the occupation. There are individuals in society who prefer to honor wealth or cultivate political studies as a branch of literary pursuits and offer themselves to serve public bodies in order to have an opportunity of discovering their knowledge and exercising their judgment. It must be chagrining to these and hurtful to the public to see who have no talent this way and ought to have no taste, preposterously obtrude themselves upon the government. It is the same as if a bricklayer should usurp the office of tailor and come up with his square and perpendicular to take the measure of a pair of breeches. It is proper that those who cultivate oratory should go to the house of orators. But for an I and no man to be ambitious of that place is to sacrifice his credit to his vanity. I would not mean to insinuate that legislatures are to be selected from the more wealthy of the citizens, yet a man's circumstances ought to be such as afford him leisure for study and reflection. There is often without taste or talent. I have no idea that because a man lives in a great house and has a cluster of bricks or stones about his backside, that he is therefore fit for a legislator. There is so much pride and arrogance with those who consider themselves first in government that it deserves to be checked by the populace, and the evil most usually commences on this side. Men associate with their own persons the adventurous circumstances of birth and fortune, so that a fellow blowing with fat and repletion convinces himself superior to the poor lean man that lodges in an inferior mansion. But in all cases, so in this, there is a medium. Genius and virtue are independent, but a man of ability and integrity that ought to be called forth to serve his country, and while on the one hand, the aristocratic part of the government arrogates a right to represent, on the other hand, the democratic contends to the point from this conjunction and opposite of forces there is produced a compound resolution which carries the object in an intermediate direction. When we see, therefore, a Teague O'Regan lifted up, the philosopher will reflect that it is to balance some purse-proud fellow equally as ignorant, that comes down from the sphere of an aristocratic interest. But every man ought to consider for himself whether it is his use to be this drawback on either side. For as when good liquor is to be distilled, you throw in some material useless in and of itself to correct the effervescence of the spirits, so it may be his part to act as a sedative. For though we commend the effect, yet still the materials retain but its original value. But as the nature of things is such, let no man who means well to the commonwealth and offer to serve it be hurt in his mind when someone of meaner talent is preferred. The people are sovereign and greatly despotic, but in the main just. I have a great mind, in order to elevate the composition, to make quotation from the Greek and Roman history, and I am conscious to myself that I have read over the writers of the government of Italy and Greece in ancient as well as modern times. But I have drawn a great deal more from reflection on the nature of things than from all writings I have ever read. Nay, the history of the election, which I have just given, will afford a better lesson to the American mind than all that is to be found in other examples. We have seen here a weaver, a favored candidate, and in the next instance, a bog trotter superseding him. Now, it may be said that this is fiction, but fiction or no fiction, The nature of the thing will make it a reality. But I return to the adventure of the captain, whom I have upon my hands, and who, as far as I can yet discover, is a good, honest man, and means what is benevolent and useful, though his ideas may not comport with the ordinary manner of thinking in every particular. That is Modern Chivalry by Hugh Henry Breckinridge. That's Brackenridge. That is the picture that you're looking at. All right, the next one we're going to do, and it's short, is Thomas Jefferson. Let's picture Thomas Jefferson. This is called An Anglican Monarchical Aristocratical Party Has Sprung Up. So here's the background. Again, this is from Our Nation's Archives, A History of the United States and Documents by J. Brun and Eric Crosby. No, by Eric Brun and J. Crosby, sorry. All right, here's the background. Almost from the beginning of Washington's term as president, Thomas Jefferson objected to the government's economic policies. Jefferson served as Secretary of State from 1789 to 1794 in Washington's cabinet and found himself constantly at odds with Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. Jefferson strongly objected to the imposition of excise taxes, full payment of federal debt, and the creation of a national bank. When Jefferson resigned his position in 1794, he wrote Washington that he had been duped and supported policies he did not endorse. As this April 24, 1796 letter to Philip Massey makes clear, Jefferson believed that Washington and the federal government had abandoned the principles of the Revolution for the sake of convenience and money. All right, here we go. The aspects of our politics had wonderfully changed since you left us. In place of that noble love of liberty and Republican government which carried us triumphantly through the war, an Anglican monarchical aristocratical party has sprung up, whose avowed object is to draw us over the substance as they have already done the forms of the British government. The main body of our citizens, however, remain true to their Republican principles. The whole landed interest is Republican, and so is a great mass of talents. Again, us are the executive, the judiciary, and 2 out of the 3 branches of the legislature, all the officers of government, all who want to be officers, all timid men who prefer the calm of despotism to the boisterous sea of liberty. British merchants and American trading on British capital, speculators and holders in the banks, and public funds, a contrivance invented for the purpose of corruption and for assimilating us in all things to the rotten, as well as the sound parts of the English model. It would give you a fever were I to name to you the apostates who had gone over these heresies, men who were Samsons in their field and Solomons in the council, but who have had their heads shorn by the harlot England. In short, we are likely to preserve the liberty we have obtained only by unremitting labors and perils, but we shall preserve it, and our massive weight and wealth on the good side is so great as to leave no danger that force will ever be attempted against us. We have only to awake and snap the Lilliputian cords which they have been entangling us during the first sleep which succeeds our labors. So that's Thomas Jefferson complaining about the Federalist Party. Let me see if I can do this. Oops, we don't need that. What happened to my screen? Oh, let's go here. That's what I wanted. Share screen. Here we go. What happened to here? So we're drinking a unfiltered Helles. It's a generic from World Market, so I'm not going to. But this is what Helles is. Helles is a traditional German pale lager beer mainly produced in the southern Germany, particularly Munich. The word hell can be translated as bright, light, or pale. Helles style, this is from Wikipedia. Helles style beers are typically medium bodied, mildly sweet, and light colored. a low bitterness and strong malt aroma and flavor. The beer is clear due to filtration before bottling. Now, this is an unfiltered, so it's not clear. Though some restaurants and breweries offered unfiltered versions. Munich style Helles is a yellow beer brewed usually cool fermentation with a lager yeast, such as Saccharomyces pasteurinalis, I think. Bitter hops such as Hallertau hops and an original specific gravity between 1.04 and 1.048, and between 4.7 and 5.6% alcohol by volume. This one is 6%, so it's a little bit on the high side. Until the 1960s, Helles was universally available in German-speaking regions. In many regions, Helles was slowly replaced by Pilsner-style beers, which was also driven by changing consumer preferences from draft beer to bottled beer. In regions outside of southern Germany, Helles was regaining popularity in 2010, particularly in Berlin, where the beer's traditional image had become trendy. And there are all kinds of examples there. So that's Helles. So we're going to go back to share the screen. We're going to go back to Thomas Jefferson, right? And we are going to look at something that John Adams wrote. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. Let's go back to get some music. Here's the music. Here, let's go back to the beginning. So again, the music's provided by Soundstripe. So John Adams, who is our second president, only served for one term. He was kind of between Washington and Jefferson. Extremely smart guy. Not a very good. It just didn't fit his demeanor. But in his time in office, they signed one of, this is a picture of it. They signed one of the worst pieces of legislation ever. It's called the Alien and Sedition Act. Would definitely need a drink before I read this. Not bad. All right. Here's the background. In the spring of 1798, oh my God, 3 documents were published showing that the French agents demanded bribes from U.S. envoys, known as the XYZ affair. The incident sparked a wave of anti-foreign sentiment. John Adams and the Federalist Party reacted with a series of 4 acts known as the Alien and Sedition Act, giving the government widespread authority to arrest and exile foreigners from the United States. The legislation extended the residency requirements for citizenship, authorized the president to deport aliens considered dangerous to public safety, and authorized the government to arrest, jail, and remove aliens during wartime. Sounds kind of familiar. The Alien Acts were never enforced, but prompted many foreign residents to either flee the country or go into hiding. 25 people were arrested under the Sedition Act, often for writing or publishing articles that criticized Federalist policies. The legislation and prosecutions were sharply criticized by Jefferson, Madison, and other political opponents of the Federalists as being unconstitutional and betraying to the principles of the American Revolution. Jefferson later pardoned those convicted under the Sedition Act. 2 of the 4 acts follow, so we're going to just read 2 of the 4. So it's about a page. So here we go. Here's the Alien Act. Section 1. Be it enacted that it shall be lawful for the President of the United States at any time during the continuation of this act to order all such aliens as he shall judge dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States, or shall have reasonable grounds to suspect are concerned in any treasonable or secret machinations against the government thereof, to depart out of the territory of the United States within such time as shall be expressed in such order, which order shall be served on such aliens by delivering him a copy thereof, or leaving the same as his usual abode, and return to the office of Secretary of State by the marshal or other persons to whom the same shall be directed. And in case any alien so ordered to depart shall be found at large within the United States after the time limited in such order for his departure, and not having obtained a license from the president to reside there, or having obtained such license shall not have been conformed thereto, every such alien shall, on conviction thereof, be imprisoned for a term not exceeding 3 years, and shall never after be admitted to become a citizen of the United States, provided always, and be it further enacted, that if any alien so ordered to depart shall prove to the satisfaction of the president, by evidence to be taken before such persons or persons as the president shall direct, who are for that purpose hereby authorized to administer oaths, that no injury or danger to the United States will arise from suffering such alien to reside therein, the president may grant a license to such alien to remain within the United States for such time as he shall judge proper, and at such place as he may designate. And the president may also require of such alien to enter into a bond in the United States in such penal sum as he may direct, with one or more sufficient sureties to the satisfaction of the person authorized by the president to take the same conditioned for good behavior of such aliens during his residence in the United States, and not violating his license, which license the president may revoke whenever he shall think proper. Section 2, and it be further enacted that it shall be lawful for the president of the United States, whenever he deem it necessary for the public safety, to order to be removed out of the territory thereof any alien who shall be imprisoned in pursuance of this act, and to cause to be arrested and sent out of the United States, such as those aliens that shall have been ordered to depart therefrom, and shall not have obtained a license, as aforesaid, in all cases where, in the opinion of the president, the public safety requires a speedy removal, and if any alien so removed or sent out to the United States by the president shall voluntarily return thereto, unless by permission of the president of the United States, such alien on conviction thereof shall be imprisoned so long as, in the opinion of the president, the public safety may require. Section 6, and it further be enacted that this act shall continue in force for and during the term of 2 years from the passing thereof. I know the current president has tried to use that, even though it supposedly only lasted for 2 years. Okay? Gotta have another sip before I read the next one. The Sedition Act. Section 1. Be it enacted that if any person shall unlawfully combine or conspire together with intent to impose any measure or measures of the government of the United States, which are or shall be directed by proper authority, or to impede the operation of any law of the United States, or to intimidate or prevent any persons holding a place or office in or under the government of the United States, shall, from undertaking, performing, or executing his trust, or duty, and if any person or persons with intent as aforesaid shall counsel, advise, or attempt to procure any insurrection, riot, unlawfully assemble, or combination where such conspiracy, threatening, counsel, advice, or attempt shall have the proposed effect or not, he or they shall have been deemed guilty of a high misdemeanor, and on conviction before any court of the United States having jurisdiction thereof, shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $5,000. That's a lot of money in 1798. And by imprisonment during a term not less than 6 months and not exceeding 5 years. And further, at the discretion of the court, may be holder to find sureties for his good behavior in such sum and for such time as the said court may direct. Section 2, that if any person shall write, print, utter, or publish, or shall cause or procure to be written, printed, uttered, or published, or shall knowingly and willingly assist or aid in writing, printing, uttering, or publishing any false, scandalous, or malicious writings, or writing against the government of the United States or the President of the United States, with intent to defame the said government or either house of the said Congress or the said president, or to bring them or either of them into contempt or disrepute, or to excite against them or either or any of them the hatred of the good people of the United States, or to stir up sedition within the United States, or to excite any unlawful combination therein, for opposing or resisting any law of the United States or any act of the President of the United States, done in pursuance of any such law or to the power in him vested by the Constitution of the United States, or to resist, oppose, or defeat any such law or act, or to aid, encourage, or abet any hostile designs of any foreign nation against the United States, their people, or government, then such persons, being thereof convicted before any court of the United States having jurisdiction thereof, shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $2,000 and by imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. Section 3, that if any person shall be prosecuted under this act for the writing or publishing and libel aforesaid, it shall be lawful for the defendant upon the trial of the cause to give in evidence his defense, the truth of the matter contained in the publication charged as libel. And the jury who shall try the cause shall have a right to determine the law and the fact under the direction of the court as in other cases. Section 4, this act shall continue to be enforced until March 3rd, 1801. So they gave that 3 years. So that is the Alien and Sedition Act, signed by John Adams, 1798. Not a very good piece of legislation. Kind of violates the First Amendment, and well, they both violate the First Amendment, actually. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of historical cases. These are a little bit post-Civil War, so they're a little bit ahead of what we're reading in our book, but this one's called Ex parte Yarborough. Why is my screen sharing paused? So here is Ex parte Yarborough. The Enforcement Act of 1870, which targeted the violence caused by the Ku Klux Klan in the post-Civil War South, prohibited, this is from oye.org, oyez.org, prohibited the use of violence or intimidation to prevent African Americans from voting. In 1883, 8 Georgia men, including Dilmus, James, Jasper, and Neil Yarborough, were charged under the Enforcement Act with intimidating Barry Saunders, an African American, to prevent him from voting in the 1882 congressional election. The 8 were convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Following their conviction, the 8 men filed petitions for writs of habeas corpus on the ground that Congress had no authority to pass the Enforcement Act. So the question is, did Congress have the authority to pass the Enforcement Act? Conclusion, in a unanimous opinion, authored by Justice Samuel Freeman Miller, you can tell that Justice Taney is gone, the court concluded that the federal government must have the power to protect the elections on which its existence depends from violence and corruption. After noting that the implied powers of the Constitution are as much a part of the instrument as what is expressed, Justice Miller wrote that the necessary and proper clause of Article 1, Section 8, in conjunction with Article 1, Section 4, which provides that Congress may at any time make or alter regulations regarding the times, place, and manners of holding elections, granted Congress the necessary authority to pass the Enforcement Act. Additionally, the court found additional defense of Congress's authority in the enforcement provision of the Fifth Amendment. The court determined that this 15th article of the amendment does substantially confer on the Negro right to vote, and Congress has the power to protect and enforce that right. So that is Ex parte Yarborough. Oh, why did it go all the way back to the beginning? All right. Yarborough. Georgia v. Stanton. We're going to look at this one. So this is Georgia v. Stanton. The state of Georgia brought suit against the Secretary of War and 2 of his generals in an effort to prevent the enforcement of the Reconstruction Acts following the Civil War. The case arose under the court's original jurisdiction. So, do the military laws invoked under the Reconstruction, this is a question, do the military laws invoked under the Reconstruction Acts unconstitutionally deprive Georgia of its sovereignty? In conclusion, Nelson maintained that this was a political question and thus out of bounds for judicial inquiry. Georgia sought rights of a political character, not rights of persons or property. Thus, the issue was outside the domain of a law or equity court. Okay, I didn't expect that. Let's see, we have time for one more. If my computer will work like it's supposed to. Actually, it's not my computer, it's my hands. All right, here's a good one. Hurtado versus California. Hurtado versus California. This will be the last thing we do today, then we'll re-reference what we talked about. All right, so the facts of the case. The state of California tried and convicted Hurtado on an information for murder. An information is a written set of accusation made by a prosecutor. Hurtado maintained that California denied him an indictment by a grand jury. A grand jury indictment is based on a majority vote of the grand jurors on presentation by the prosecution. Now, let me give you a little background. I have served on grand jury. It's really interesting. And we did it once a week for a month. We heard about 10 cases a week. And we decided whether or not there was enough evidence to go to trial. And it's done in secret. Can't talk about it even now. That was probably 10 years ago. Probably approved 8 out of the 10. But you usually only hear from the prosecution. So here's the question. Here's the constitutional question. Does a state criminal proceeding based on information rather than a grand jury indictment violate the 14th Amendment's due process clause? Remember, this is post-Civil War. Well, I disagree with the court. No, according to the court, this was not a violation of due process. Any legal proceedings that protect liberty and justice is due process. The majority opinion, authored by Matthews, reasoned that the Constitution cannot be locked into static conceptions bound by time and place. The court also took the position that nothing in the Constitution is superfluous, since the Fifth Amendment contains both the guarantee of a grand jury proceeding and the guarantee of due process. The latter cannot embrace the former. But if he didn't hear, okay, I'm going to disagree with the Supreme Court on this one. What do I know? I'm just a teacher. But whatever. All right, so let's get the music playing again. Again, the music's all provided by Soundstripe. I'm going to have to need to add a couple more songs, I think. All right, so let's go back to our little PowerPoint. Let's do some review. So again, thanks for listening to Riley's Documents and Drafts. We used the book today, Nation's Archives, A History of the United States in Documents, edited by Eric Brunn and Jay Crosby. We talked about Helles, which I'm drinking an unfiltered Helles. Pretty good. We read Modern Chivalry by Hugh Henry Brackenridge, which is like an Americanized version of what's called Don Quixote. Interesting. We read Thomas Jefferson's An Anglican Monarchical Aristocratical Party Has Sprung Up, which is his dislike of the Federalist Party, which Alexander Hamilton, Washington, kind of, but predominantly Hamilton, John Adams. We read the Alien and Sedition Act, one of the worst decisions we've ever made. We went to the Supreme Court history and read Ex parte Yarborough. We read two other cases. Wow, they're escaping me now. So let's go. Can we go back and look? Shoot. Oh well, I forget. So let's just go back. Ex parte Yarborough. Is that what I wanted? There we are. Again, just drive me bananas because I can't remember the cases and I need to tell you again what they were. There we go. Um, Ex parte Yarborough, Hurtado v. California, and Georgia v. Stanton. Why couldn't I remember those three? So the Yarborough case is about is the obligation to is the military laws invoked under the Reconstruction Act deprive Georgia of its sovereignty? The answer is no. Does a state criminal proceeding based on information rather than a grand jury indictment violate the 14th Amendment? The Supreme Court said no. I say yes, so I'm wrong. Um, and then Georgia v. Yeah, so those are the three cases that we talked about. So I want to thank again, podcast is available, Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podcast Addict, and other platforms, also including YouTube. Music was provided by Soundstripe. Check out our Facebook page, Docs and Documents and Drafts. Check out our YouTube page, Docs and Drafts. You can find the YouTube link there. The books used, again, Our Nation's Archive, edited by Eric Brunn and Jay Crosby. That's the one we used today. The pictures of Brackenridge, Jefferson, Adams, and the Alien and Sedition Act from Getty Images. The Supreme Court information came, because we just did historical stuff today, it came from oea.org. The cover art for Documents and Draft was done by a former student of mine, Emma Williams. And the YouTube help is also done by a former student, Olivia Baldwin. So thanks. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. So I hope you enjoyed it. All right. Have a great one.